special meeting of the Seward City Council to order. It's Monday, June 12th. It is 5:30 p.m. And Chief, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Calhoun.
Here.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Here.
Councilmember Wells.
Here.
Councilmember DeMoss.
Here.
Councilmember Finch.
Here.
Councilmember Osenga.
Here.
And Mayor McClure.
Here.
Mayor McClure, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. We're now at citizens' comments on any subject except items scheduled for public hearing. We have no public hearing. And if you've signed in, you get 3 minutes right off the top. And if you didn't sign in, if there's time within the 36 minutes allotted, you may raise your hand and I'll call you up to speak. And Madam Clerk, is there anyone signed in?
Mayor McClure, there is no one signed in.
Okay, is there anyone wishing to speak? If you do, let me know now. Okay, I see no one. So I'll move on to the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. And I would ask for a motion and a second, please.
I move to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Councilmember Osenga.
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Yes.
Councilmember Wells.
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Yes.
Councilmember DeMoss.
Yes.
Councilmember Finch.
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Mayor
Okay.
McClure, vote is unanimous.
Okay.
Agenda and consent agenda is approved.
Thank you. Down to new business. The one item of business we have is to review the applications received by Human Resources for the city manager position. And we have our Human Resources Director here. If there are questions for her about how this proceeds and such things. So each of us, just so the public knows, each of us now has a binder with the applications in, and also some potential interview questions and a few items of like how we would proceed. So I'll just kick this off by saying, and just in case the public didn't know, we have 5 applicants for the city manager position. And they've been informed that we are doing this discussion about them. And what we first off tonight, I would think, should discuss and decide is about which of those or all of those or however for interviews, because that would be the next phase after. If we choose people for interviews, then I'll ask the HR director to explain there has to be some vetting and a few things and they have to be called. But what we need to do first is just decide which ones should we interview or all. But then also addendum, I have scheduled, there is an executive session, as you know, in this meeting if we choose to use that to discuss candidates, but we really don't need to discuss all the candidates if we choose to interview them all at this point anyway. So I don't know if that made sense to everybody, but we can proceed however we choose here, basically. So I'll just go around and ask people what their opinions are. Councilmember Wells.
Thank you. I need clarification on that, I'm sorry. We know how sensitive the executive sessions are, and I just want to make sure that the public understands and that I understand. So what you're saying is that we have 4 applicants, correct?
We have 5.
Or 5 applicants. And we're going to choose tonight which ones we want to interview.
Yes.
And then I know that we have some applicants that have already said they're requesting public interview.
just one.
One applicant? Okay. But we get to decide whether or not we do a public interview or not, or the attorney has directed us.
Oh,
That's my question. Has the attorney directed us to do executive session or not?
it's not for the interview, that, it was for any discussion of these people tonight, that the one applicant wanted it made public and not in an executive session.
Okay.
So to talk about any of the characteristics or anything about the application for that one individual, other than in public, would be in violation of his request.
So to
Is that-
clarify,
Yeah.
for the public, does the council have the option to not offer the other four candidates the option of us discussing in executive session or in public? Do we have the ability to say, we're going to discuss this 100% in public, these other four applicants?
I think I'll ask our HR director to.
So I had reached out, thank you, Madam Mayor, I had reached out to the attorney regarding the question, and I reached out to all the applicants and advised them that we were going to be discussing this tonight. And if they wanted it in a public forum or an executive session, that they needed to let me know by Thursday, by a certain time. I only heard back from one applicant stating they would like it a public discussion. Therefore, all the other applicants, if we're going to discuss anything about them, would be an executive session. And I do have the letter from the attorney that clarifies that as well.
Yes, Mr. Wells.
So, thank you for that, and I just want to make sure that the public hears this, because I have received a lot of issues, or not, a lot of concerns regarding the amount of executive sessions that we do, and we understand, all of us in the community understand that our local newspaper has been commenting on the number of executive issues that we do, and I hope when our local newspaper writes their next article regarding our executive sessions, that they understand that we are acting per recommendations of the city attorney, not on our own, So thank you for checking into that and making it public.
Did you have any other comments on that at this time?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay. So, the simple thing tonight, we have 5 applicants. We could just choose to interview all of them, and then we would not need to discuss any of them at this point, and discuss them after the interviews when they all get a fair interview. So that's the easy option, I think, for us tonight. If, for example, there are applicants that you don't want to interview, then that becomes a more interesting discussion, so. Councilmember DeMoss.
Okay, so I would say that if we're going to discuss anything outside of what's on the application, then we should be in executive session. But from the applications, I think that there's a lot of information, and I wouldn't mind dwindling it down, narrowing it down to 2 or 3 to interview tonight. After a little bit of thought, I think that that would be a better use of our time instead of interviewing everybody, unless everybody else feels differently, of course.
Okay. Councilmember Wells.
Yes, thank you. And I don't mean to take up everybody's
That's okay,
time,
we've
but
got-
I'm going to agree with Councilmember DeMoss, because after reading over the applications and the letters that were submitted, in my opinion, there's at least one applicant that we don't necessarily need to interview, in my opinion.
Okay.
And that's just me, of course.
So, is our attorney on the phone? No. All right. So, let me ask our HR director then, if we wanted to discuss specific ones, pro and con, just in terms of, I want to interview these 4 or something, is that something we can do in public?
I believe from the attorney, anything that we're going to discuss regarding the individuals that did not request a public discussion, we do need to go into executive session for that, to discuss anything about the other applicants.
See, that's where I'm thinking more that we, at this point, might want to just interview them all and make it simple, because otherwise, yeah, I know. So basically, we can't discuss anything except we could discuss Mr. Blatchford, right?
Correct, the other ones
But
we have to go
nobody
into
else,
executive.
yeah, without going into executive session. Councilmember Barnwell.
If that's the case, I think we should go into executive session.
Okay.
personally.
Okay, Councilmember Finch?
I think I agree with Councilmember DeMoss as well as, pick 2 or 3. I'm going to executive work, pick 2 or 3 and go from there.
Okay. Well, we could pick the 2 or 3 without discussing specifics. Do you want to try that first and go, Councilmember Wells?
Yes, thank you. The applicant who has agreed for us to speak publicly, I did not see in there where the applicant has agreed to move to Seward. Because if I understand, they live in Anchorage right now, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
And so have you heard one way or the other if the applicant, I know that they understand that they have to be here, but have they made any comments about they have, if given a job, they have housing lined up, or?
Councilman Wells, that is a no. I haven't heard anything other from them regarding that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can say that. So, if this is what we want to try to whittle it down, who wants to go first of their top 3? We can do that, correct? Councilmember Barnwell?
I'll do 3. So we can't talk about the other 2, right? I'll just pick, I have 3. I think Edgar Blatchford is definitely, I would like to speak to Edgar. Susanna Stinnett and Kat Sorensen.
Okay. Who else? Councilmember Finch.
Yeah, I'd like to see Susanna Stinnett, Samuel Sokowski, and George Zoku because of their experience and where the city needs.
Okay. Who else wants to go? Councilmember DeMoss.
I'd like to see Susanna and
The list is here.
Kat Sorensen. Do we have to pick 3?
No, you don't have to, I don't think you have to pick 3. We're just doing a tally and see if we can come to some consensus. How about the others? If you don't have an opinion, I guess that's an opinion too. Well, my top 3 are Blatchford, Sorensen, and Stinnett. And so that's my vote as far as the interviews. Councilmember Wells.
Yes, thank you. Am I allowed to check our city email? Because there was a very detailed email that was sent to us and I cannot remember the name. Am I allowed to do that? Or are we not? I know that we're not supposed to touch our phones. And so, and I'm okay with that. Does anybody else remember that?
I've got it here.
I guess.
Has it been verified?
I just couldn't remember the person's name. I'm not saying that that's one of the people, I just,
Because one of my questions in that email was, has HR verified all of that information, or because you can find conspicuous things?
and I would love to ask that.
You can, well,
Madam Mayor, I believe it's phone calls or emails are not allowed to check during the meeting, I
Right.
believe, so.
so yeah, we
Okay.
should have done that before.
No problem.
We're not making a final decision on the city manager tonight. We're just trying to decide who to interview, so. And I'm assuming if you haven't spoken on that, like your top few, you have no opinion, or you're okay with interviewing all 5, which I would absolutely be okay with. And we're not hearing anything, so that's okay. Councilmember Calhoun.
Well, my number one thing that I would like to do, and it's a discussion maybe later on, is extend the application period another 30 days. But beyond that, if I have to select those that I would like to interview tonight, I would just interview all 5.
Okay, well, that brings up a whole nother discussion then, before we continue on this track. Let's discuss, do we want to deal with this batch and see if we can come up with the adequate city manager, or do we want to extend the application for a further period of time? I know that, okay, Councilmember Calhoun.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
No, that's okay.
And interrupt you like that. I would like to be able to hold these applications and extend the period another 30 days because quite honestly, just my own personal opinion and the research that I've done, I don't think that we have found the city manager in these 5 that we really need right now.
If we did that, and in another 30 days, if we ended up with no more applicants or, then just hypothetically, would you be ready to move on with interviewing these at that point? Or, let me see.
I would be willing to interview some of them at that point, yes.
Vice Mayor was saying.
So my only question then is then we're not going to ever even think about using GovHR to do a nationwide search then? We're just going to...
Well, that was going to be my next discussion item, but, yeah, Councilmember.
Well, I'll just put out my feelings on it. I feel good about this list. I think we got a couple at least good applications, and I would like to move forward with this and not extend the application period. And I'm okay with interviewing all 5.
Councilmember Wells.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm also okay with interviewing all 5. My question is that related to Councilmember Calhoun, whether I agree or disagree, my question is are we allowed to interview all 5? And if after that interview process, none of us are convinced that we have a qualified person, are we then allowed to put it back out?
I would ask our HR person before I comment.
I don't see a reason why we cannot interview all 5 of them.
If they're willing to have the interview, I would say. I mean, they may just say, no, I'm done too. But then, go ahead, Councilmember Wells.
Is that okay, Councilmember Finch? So follow up with that then, Councilmember Calhoun, would you be willing at this point to move forward with interviewing all 5? And if we don't come to a unanimous decision on hiring one of these applicants, at that point putting it back out? And the reason why I ask is because I'm concerned, number one, about our temporary city manager and the amount of stress that he's under being peak season right now. I believe that as far as locals go, anybody who is interested applied. And I believe that anybody within the state who was interested over the last 30 days had the option to see it, knows that we're hiring. I mean, we know right here how many different areas are hiring city managers. So if we know, I believe that people who are qualified and looking for that position within our state know. So I'm quite confident that we have all the applicants that we're going to get from Seward or from the state at this point.
Okay. There was a hand. Councilmember Finch.
I was kind of thinking what Councilmember was thinking about putting it out for GovHR for 30 days, seeing what stacks up on top of this, and then going for it. Because my focus is on maximum amount of experience and qualifications that this town needs. Not teaching somebody. They should be able to walk in with financial director, city manager experience, all that stuff. And all they have to do is just adapt their knowledge to our systems.
Councilmember DeMoss.
Well, when we received the applications from GovHR last time, we received 10 after we spent like over $30,000, and I only liked one of them. And out of these, and I know that a couple of you don't like any of these, but I think a few of us like, or care for, or whatever. Excuse me.
Yeah, we have to be careful.
I think that we did get higher quality results with just sending it out the way that we did. So that's a $30,000 decision. I mean, I have to GovHR for 30 days, which is a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Wells.
So I would still like to ask Councilmember Calhoun for his response. If is he willing to interview these 5 at this point so that we can at least move forward? And then if we don't make a decision, put it back out for 30 days.
Councilmember Calhoun?
I'm fine with interviewing these 5 and seeing where that takes us. My concern, and it has nothing to do necessarily with these applicants, it's never personal, with me about any of this stuff, is I want to make sure that we don't rush into a decision too quickly. And I understand the concerns, with the acting city manager and what's going on. But this is a really, in the sewer today, this is a really important decision. And getting a really good city manager is a priority, almost as much of a priority as getting a finance director.
I agree.
Which a couple of these applicants might be qualified to do. Anyway, so I'm fine with interviewing all 5, taking a look at where that takes us, and then deciding whether or not we need to go out again. I still am not in favor of spending $30,000 with GovHR at this point. And so, my thought right now would be let's interview all 5 and see where it takes us.
For the public, this is the sausage making I was referring to before, that, this is how it works, and we'll come to a decision here pretty quick. Okay. Councilmember Barnwell.
So some of these candidates are, I think live on the East Coast, or there's a wide variety of where they live. Can we interview some of these live and some of these Zoom, or how does that work?
My suggestion was going to be that we offer, at their own expense perhaps, any live interviews they want, but have a Zoom option also they could choose. I would think ones that don't have to travel far would probably prefer to be in here, in person. But this, I don't see this as the time where we pay the expense to have someone come from back east. That would have been if we had 2 candidates and we're trying to decide, right? I mean, that's just how I see it. So, and I checked with our HR director, and that seems reasonable to offer both options, and they'd have to make a decision, and we could accommodate either of those options. Does that? I don't know. That might be viewed as giving one an advantage over another, but they would have the option. I think in this day and age, Zoom is probably as effective as real life. We don't expect, I don't think we want to pay the travel expenses at this stage from back east. Just my opinion, but yeah, that would be okay. Okay, so we've kind of circled back and around instead of a tally of which ones to interview. I'm thinking these interviews would take about a half hour each. I just don't think we have to drag it out, and we might even limit the questions that on some of the, we've got some sample questions we can talk about here tonight too, but if we did a half hour each, that's what, 2.5 hours. We could handle that. And to do all 5, I mean, that's just still what I'm kind of thinking at this point. If everyone was willing to do that, what we could do is decide, we should decide as, okay, do we want to interview all 5? I think that's, once again, the first big decision we have to make, and then we can discuss when and how and such. So if we can agree with that. That also doesn't negate, if we don't like any of them after the interview, going out again in any form we choose, I would think. So, we've got to do something. So, what do you think? I think we would probably have to vote on that kind of a decision. I think so. We had a motion. Vice Mayor
Since I
Rosenthal.
say, can I just make a motion that we vote on, or we interview all 5 applicants?
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved and seconded. I know this is kind of backwards. We've been discussing that before the motion, but we're making sausage here, and it's all. Is there any more discussion about that at this point? I mean, we're going to, after that vote, we'll be giving the direction of how and what and a whole lot of other stuff. So, Councilmember Barnwell.
Without getting into details, how do we, is this HR's responsibility to dive deeper into these candidates?
Oh.
Or how does that work?
We could ask our director, there is at some point, there's the background check stuff. When does that happen?
Correct. Usually, Madam Mayor, that is done when we're going to make an offer, and it's usually pending a background check. But I can reach out to the company that we're going to use if you would prefer me to do them in advance, and I can see if that can be done. I will need a little bit more time though as far as setting up interviews.
Discussion.
Yeah, just kind of to add on to that, does that background check, does it dive into their work history? And how much in depth is that back, or is it just more of a criminal records or something like that? And how detailed do we get on these background checks?
Correct. I believe they do the Google search, they do all of the social, they do the full range. I do have AML that I could use normally, but the gentleman is not in right now, so I do have another firm that I would be reaching out to be doing the background checks for us.
Okay.
Councilmember Wells.
Regarding the background checks, number one, does that cost money?
Yes, it will.
Number two, why is it that with only 5 applicants, unless it's a legality issue, why is it that HR can't look at their social media pages, go to Truthfinder, and type in their first name, last name, and address, and it gives the entire criminal history, and then call the references, and call the past employment? Why would we need to pay for a background check?
Go ahead.
No, I absolutely can. I just letting you guys know we do have a firm that we can use to do a more thorough background check, because there's items that I cannot check, which I do not know yet until we actually get into that.
Follow up.
Just to remind you, we're sort of discussing
Yes.
a motion to interview all 5, and then we can kind of delve deeper in that, I think. Councilmember Finch.
Before you do that, could I ask that, I know we forgot to add this, but have their last 2 current evaluations of these individuals, and their evaluations and where they work, be sent to us?
I don't know. Councilmember Moss.
I was just gonna say probably not. Just I feel like that's too specific.
Yeah. Councilmember Moss.
As an employer, that's a legality issue, and I would not be allowed to share those evaluations with anyone outside of my board.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Madam Mayor, I think, even though we're still just discussing
I know.
the 5, I don't think Councilmember Finch was talking about getting those evaluations from the employers, but asking the applicants to send us their last 2 evaluations.
That's what I was asking.
I understand.
Okay, we can.
Okay.
But that's a different subject.
Yeah. Are we ready to vote on this particular motion? The motion being to interview or request interviews from all 5 of the applicants, correct? Okay. Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote on that.
Councilmember Asenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun?
Yes.
Councilmember Finch?
Yes?
Councilmember Barnwell?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMoss?
Yes.
Councilmember Wells?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
You have a unanimous vote. Motion passed.
Okay. Having done that, now we can talk about the specifics of the interview. I think the first thing might be to come up with a potential date and then look at the questions. So that brings me back around to our HR director. And what are you thinking?
Thank you.
We need a realistic date. You'd have to notify them and we'd have to approve the questions. And it would have to work with us too, so, yeah, all that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In your packet, there are 2 different sets of questions, option 1, option 2, for you to review and decide which ones you would like to use. For the actual interview date, it could possibly be the week of June 26th, and then of course we have a holiday after that, so the week of July 10th.
So you're saying the week of June 26th? June 26th, we have a meeting
Somewhere.
that night.
In the
So
week
it would
of-
be during that week, okay.
And we have 5, so we could set those all up for one day.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and just try to, I mean, I don't know, we'd have to, with the questions, it seems like it was about a half hour for each the last couple times we've done this. And so can we look at a date? I mean, okay, so that's enough time to notify them and do what you've got to do?
Yes,
June,
ma'am.
the week of June 26th, that's 2 weeks from now. Okay. How's June 26th, folks, for us? Except not June 26th, but any of the days of the week after that, like, there would likely be other, we have in our other packet the city calendar. What else is meeting the week of June 26th? Our P and Z and, I mean, use of the room.
Madam Mayor, I believe there are no other meetings that week. Planning and zoning has a work session on the 20th, the week before.
On which?
The 20th.
20th, okay. So should we just talk dates then? Tuesday
Wednesday, the
evening?
28th.
Wednesday, the 28th? Wednesday, the 28th? And we all, I mean, this is a very important meeting. We're almost always all here anyway, but is anybody planning a fishing trip? Oh, yeah, right. Go ahead, Councilmember Wells.
So, I do have a trip planned to ADAC for fishing during that time period. However, I want the public to know how serious I believe this is, and I will cancel my trip and be here.
Is it during that whole period?
It is, yeah.
Oh, shoot. Could we
But
go on
it's-
one end or the other of
No.
your trip?
But this is more important.
Oh, we love you. Okay, that's not for the record. Okay. Does Tuesday the 28th work?
No, Wednesday.
I mean, Wednesday the 20th, I wrote
Yes.
Tuesday, I don't know, I'm tired. Okay, what time then? We will be dealing with people from back east, but this has happened before, and they've just interviewed first, I think, on Zoom or something. So if we started at 5:30 or something, you don't want to come earlier than that, right?
You can shoot for 5.
5?
5?
5
Start the interviews
PM.
at 5?
If he's gonna skip a trip to ADAC, I'll have to try to get here.
Yeah, okay, we all have to sacrifice
I think I'd
something.
get here before 5:30.
Okay. So 5 PM, Wednesday, the 28th, and then you would be in charge of scheduling them. I think it should be either random or take the ones from back east first, because that would be kinder. Does that sound okay? But otherwise randomize. I mean, I don't know that there's an advantage to be early or not, but, you know, in our elections, it's a random thing on the ballot, and I'd like to see that. I want this to be really fair, and have a fair, similar interview. Now, with the interviews, what we've done before, if you haven't been here, is we have the same questions for each candidate, and what we would do is just go around and each, we'd take turns asking questions. So I know people have been here a lot, we've done this a lot. So, you know, they get to we all ask questions in order, and then we just keep cycling around, and we take notes and we think about each one, and like that. Okay, does that sound reasonable? And let's just talk about this for a minute. I know that the ones back east are not gonna wanna come up here, I'm just assuming. So they will be Zoom. So are we okay about the offering of, the option of Zoom or in person to all of them fairly, so they can choose? Right? Okay. I mean, I just want everybody, you would offer the same thing to all of them, then, that's what I'm saying. So, okay. And then you will let the candidates know. Councilmember Wells.
I don't mean to drag this
No,
out, so I
no, that's
appreciate
fine.
it.
This is what we're doing tonight.
Yep, okay. Are we to the questions yet?
Well, that's what, that's what.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Because if so-
Yes, that's where I was going.
Okay, so, because if so, to HR through the mayor, weren't these questions asked during the letters that we received for the applicants? I feel like a lot of the applicants already addressed some of these questions in their cover letters, whatever that letters, whatever you call it.
There are always some like that, but you get to hear them in person too.
Okay.
You know, I mean, they're from their voice, but, you know, do you want to comment on
And
that,
if there's
Jen?
something you would like removed, that's,
Okay.
of course,
So,
we can remove them as
I'd
well.
like to
Keep them the
ask-
same.
Other than the number of questions, what's the big difference between option 1 and option 2 in your mind?
Not a huge difference, just different questions, different, some of the way some of the questions are worded. There's not a whole big difference, just different questions. It's more what you guys were looking for in the candidate.
Because I would think the fewer questions, the better. One time, GovHR, this was in the way back time, gave us a whole lot of questions, and it just got ridiculous after a certain point, you know? So, the shorter one is option 2, that's all I'm saying. Councilmember Finn.
For HR, are we allowed to change the wording in some of these questions?
Yes, correct, that's what we're going
So-
to go over them for and see how you guys would like them.
We have the time now, since we've pretty much made the big decision, we're gonna, you know, about the interview. So we could, let's first, do we want to just look at one option? And
Option 1.
did you want to chime in?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I don't think you should be talking about the questions in the public.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So I think what we need to do is choose option 1 or 2. And then, if you feel inclined, that could be an email
Yes, it can.
situation to let HR know? Okay.
There would just have to be, Madam Mayor, there would
Two.
just have to be concise that you cannot discuss between each other.
Right,
in the email.
right. You know, this is the only time we can talk, but we can't talk about these unless, you know.
Or to go into executive session.
I'm pretty confident about the questions. Go ahead, Councilmember DeMoss.
So I definitely have a couple of questions that I specifically would like to ask. So I just want to clarify that we are going to, if we have our own questions that we want added to this, email the clerk or HR, and you will add them to this.
Can we, or we could also set up another meeting? Is that possible, where we could all sit and?
Unfortunately,
No.
Can't do it in
what I
public
should
forum.
Can't do it in
have
public.
scheduled for the executive session was discuss the questions, but I didn't know that we'd even get that far tonight, so, yeah, that would be the kind of thing we could do. Madam Clerk, yeah.
Madam Mayor, just for a point of parliamentary procedure, council should not be emailing HR directly, directing them on how the question should be done.
Okay,
That
that's,
could be something that you guys can work out in the executive session tonight, which is still planned.
but I wish we had the attorney, because the executive session is a very specific thing, and that's not, this, choosing the questions is not choosing the candidates.
Correct.
It could be discussed in another meeting.
I know. Let me get the city manager first.
Yeah, I was just saying that, you know, you're doing the questions in the executive session, in my opinion, would be fine. Of course, the attorney's not here, but you're not discussing any candidate, you're just talking about questions.
Councilmember Wells.
Yeah.
Thank you. Question for the acting city manager. I guess I don't understand, if we're not discussing the candidates or their qualifications or their individuality, why is it you believe that we can't discuss the questions in public?
Because if you discuss the
Because
questions,
then they know.
excuse me, if they're watching on TV, then they're going what the questions are going to be.
That was,
They're going to know what the questions are when we ask? Oh,
it's all right.
Red Bull kicking in.
Yeah, all right, I get it.
No, that's perfectly
Good point.
fine. Yes, Tammy.
Madam Mayor, is it possible, can we make a committee
Yeah.
to just do the questions?
We've done that before, just had a little subcommittee and they could meet this week and then send them out to all of us, and if there's any last minute corrections, does that sound fine? We have the two really glorious options here, and I think within those, I think that's how we did it before anyway. I'm always the one that, I'd rather not do the work, I'll just pick this one, but, and in the long run, tweaking the words a little bit probably doesn't matter a whole lot in terms of, okay, so there's an option, have a committee to discuss and maybe with the aid of our HR director.
Yes.
Okay, if we, Councilmember Finch, if we were to do that, well, let's just ask around. Is everyone okay with having a committee do that? Because you understand, we can't just sit here and say, oh, well, question number one is this, so. Councilmember.
I'd be willing to be on the committee.
Okay. And Councilmember Demas, it can be as big as small as we want.
Depends on what
Oh, I
time.
believe it has to be no more than 3.
No more, well, yeah, I guess within that parameter,
Unless you
yeah.
want
It
to have
could be
open
2.
meetings.
Anybody else just dying to do it? Because, okay, so Vice Mayor Osenga would be willing, but it can't be during his work time, but it could be a noon time-ish?
I think noontime will work.
So is that, so we have 3?
Yeah, I'm willing to do it.
Okay. Are we okay with that? Can we trust these 3? I think so. Okay, so then we don't have to sit here tonight and read through on our own on these?
Mayor McCarthy?
Yes.
Just to clarify, was that Finch, Osenga, and
Demas.
Demas? Thank you.
Sorry, Finch, Osenga, and Demas will be our question review and planning committee. So then we have voted to do this, and do we still technically have to vote to direct HR to do all these things, or is that just part of what we have just decided? If this were a discussion item and a normal thing, we would have to vote to direct HR, and we didn't actually say that. We just voted to interview and assume that's her job, right? But I'm questioning now, do we need another vote to just make this effectively happen? Do you know this?
I don't believe we need a vote, but you probably need to make a time for the committee to meet here soon.
We should set this now? Okay. Okay, committee members, when do you guys pick a time, pick a day? It's got to be well before the 28th at 5 p.m. because,
Right.
go ahead.
This Thursday would work for me.
Thursday?
I think so.
What time?
Noon or,
It shouldn't take more than an hour.
Yeah, should we meet in HR office?
Yeah.
Would that be
That would be
okay with
great.
you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thursday at noon?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Thursday, the 15th.
Yes, the 15th.
Okay, is that clear?
so that's 15.
I don't know what day
Yep.
that is. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I can't be there on that day.
Okay, the discussion continues.
Yeah, I need to change that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm in Anchorage.
So that's Thursday. So
Any other day this week or next week
Friday?
besides the 20th? Friday works for me. Does that work for you? Sorry, thank you.
sausage making once again. I love it. Okay, did you get that? No. All right, I'm going to ask HR Director Penny, is there anything else we need to do in regards with all this at this point?
Madam Mayor, I don't believe so. I have the date, Wednesday 28th, 5 p.m. to start for the interviews, and then the question committee will be this Friday on the 16th. I believe I think I've got everything.
Okay, Councilmember Wells.
And I apologize if this isn't the correct way to do this, but I'd like to make a motion that HR do as much of a background check prior to the interview process and present that information to us for review prior to the interview process.
Is there a second? Second from Finch? Discussion. Councilmember?
Are you requesting just our HR to do that, or are we gonna contract that out?
Art?
Sorry, just to discuss that a little bit. I don't know what the cost of it is, but one thing that's nice about contracting out is it's completely objective. So none of us can we would be less likely to question whatever that firm found. No offense to our HR, but it just takes onus off you, and it gives us all a little more confidence in the results.
Let me just ask, HR Director again, you were saying there's an alternative to AML doing that? What were you saying? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, Madam Mayor. Yes, there is another company that we can use. I can, however, check with AML and just see where we are at with the person that does do the background checks and if it is a possibility, because AML, we do not get charged for that. So I'm more than happy to check with them first.
That's what I was wondering in reference to you. Councilmember Wells.
So, then I would like to amend my motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to direct HR in the event that AML is not able to perform background checks for us in a timely manner for us to review prior to the meeting, that HR do the best that they can do to gather information for us. Period.
Does the second agree?
Second.
Did you get all those words?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you want to repeat that?
To make a motion to direct HR in the event that AML cannot perform the background checks in a timely manner prior to the interview process, that our HR director perform the best background check of their capabilities prior to the interview process.
Is everyone clear? Okay, any more discussion on that? Vice Mayor?
I'm just trying to figure out if this is even really necessary, because we're going to have background checks done anyways, somewhere in this process. So I'm not even sure that this is necessary.
Okay, I'll get Wells and then Finch.
To Councilmember Barnwell and Councilmember Osenga, the reason why I made that motion is because if we're going to interview these 5 people first, and then possibly put it back out for another 30 days, I know that when we pick 1 or 2 applicants, that's normally the time that we do the background checks. However, because we're going to interview these 5 applicants and then possibly put it back out for 30 days, I would like to have some of that, as much of that background information in advance, because we could be possibly making a decision at that time.
Correct.
Okay. And I'll ask, is that a reasonable time frame for you to check with AML and then do what you can
Yes, ma'am.
within this time frame?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Any other discussion about that? Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we can vote on that motion.
On the amendment for the motion.
The amended, right. Vote on the amendment for the motion, yes.
Councilmember Wells?
Yes.
Councilmember Osenga?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMoss?
Yes.
Councilmember Finch?
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell?
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes for the amendment. Now for the main motion, which is in the event that AML is not able to perform background checks in a timely manner prior to the interview date, that HR will, to the best of their ability, perform the background checks prior to the interview. Councilmember Wells?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMoss?
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell?
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun?
Yes.
Councilmember Finch?
Yes.
Councilmember Osenga?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure.
Yes.
The motion passed unanimous.
Is there anything else that we need to do within this process tonight? We can't discuss the candidates. Yes, Councilmember Finch.
Like I'm asking, could we request from these applicants that their last two current evals be sent to us? From them?
Well, I guess you could make a motion and we can discuss it and vote on that. I'm sure that this happens in applications, but I can't discuss this until we have a motion, so.
I thought you had something.
No, that's okay.
So if you want to make that a
I'd
motion.
like to make a motion that we have HR contact the applicants, that they send us their last two current evals.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second for discussion.
Okay. Vice Mayor Olson.
So I would just, I don't know that I've ever been asked ever for an evaluation of mine from me to anybody that's looking to hire me. If we're not getting it from the employer, then we're getting a document from the person who's trying to get this job. I have no idea what their evaluation forms look like. I have no idea if it's going to be truthful or not. I have no idea if it's not fabricated. So to me, this just doesn't even, I can't even see how this would, I don't know if I could even just, I don't know that I can vote for something like this because I'm not sure that it would be that effective.
Okay, other comments?
I
Councilman?
know in my career is very effective because we would ask for promotions. You submit your prior evals for job hiring. We've done the same thing.
Councilmember Wells.
I guess I would like to, I wish we had the attorney available because, again, in all the multiple states I've hired employees, I know that we cannot ask the employer for that. And I do agree with Councilmember Osenga, although, excuse me, I would like to trust that every applicant is 100% trustworthy. But I do agree with Councilmember Osenga that we would have to take that evaluation with a grain of salt because we can't follow up on it. But I'm not opposed to seeing what they come up with. Finally, I'm not sure that we should discredit an applicant's or not discredit, but deny an interview if the applicant doesn't present the last evaluations.
That's another thing to consider.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Calhoun.
I'm not opposed to prior evaluations at all. The challenge that we have is we didn't require it when we put out the notice. Had we done it then it's not an issue. They can either comply or not comply. But to add it on now, even though I agree with it and I would like to see them, if we add it on now, I don't know how that holds up under scrutiny, you know, because now we're like, let's look at their last two evaluations.
Yeah.
And that wasn't part of what we did in our job announcement. That's the challenge I would have.
Councilmember Wells.
I would like to ask Councilmember Finch, after hearing Councilmember Calhoun, would you be willing to amend the motion to, if we don't pick one of these 5 applicants and it goes back out, we could alter at that point the the request for submitted documentation, and we could add that at the time.
Yes, I could, that motion that you're saying, yes, I could go for that. Where if they're not submitted, and we put it back out, then we add 2 prior evals.
Does this sort of qualify as a whole different motion, and we should
They could actually withdraw the motion.
just withdraw and make a new motion? That's what I would see.
Well, no, they could just withdraw their motion, because you guys could do another motion when you come to that point. Because you'll be holding the
That's what I'm
I'll
saying.
just withdraw it then.
Okay. Councilmember Calhoun.
That was my only comment,
Yeah.
is there was really no reason for us to vote on that now, because
Right.
we may not even come to that eventuality.
But it is a valid point that if we want something like that, I mean, you know this is going to come up again, no matter how long our next city manager is here, we're going to be doing it again. That would be something that would be good to have in mind, or, I mean, we can look back at this and remember that we want that as part of it, because, you know, each time we get new council members, they have new ideas that, you know, others of us haven't thought of before, so, is that good? Okay. Anything else come to mind in this?
I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
So Councilmember Fincher withdrawing the motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Anything else? Going once, going twice. Citizens' comments then, and we have a citizen here that I would really like to hear from. And you can have 5 minutes if you would choose to speak. This is the 5-minute time where you don't have to sign in. Oh, look, there's a citizen coming up now. We would need your name and if you live inside or outside the city limits, please.
Tim Dillon, Executive Director, Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District, outside the city limits. So first of all, just so that you know, I've been the Executive Director for the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District for the last 8 years. Prior to that, I was the city manager in Seldovia for 8 years. I can tell you, and my board member is sitting right there, for economic development, in an executive position, a lot of times you don't get evaluations. We get evaluated on every day of the week. So I can tell you, if I were to have applied for the job, I could not give you an evaluation because I haven't had one. The other thing I was going to mention to your HR director is I used to sit on the board of directors for AML-JIA. That's another group that you could call and ask Kevin Smith or somebody. They could run a background for you if Nils doesn't have anybody to do that. This was a very, very good discussion, and I think you all are well on your way to hiring a new city manager. It's one of those things that, as I said, you know, I spent 8 years as a city manager. I was actually the president of all the city managers for the state of Alaska for 2 years. So I kind of know my way around city managers and who's who and those kind of things. And I don't think there's anybody that grows up prepared to be a city manager. So I think one of the things, you know, as I reviewed the 5 different applications, you've got a good diverse group there for you to be able to, and I'm glad that you're going to interview everybody, so everybody will get a chance to sit in front of you and you'll be able to ask those questions. But to especially Alaska, it's really weird. What you do somewhere else doesn't automatically just click the boxes or check the boxes that you can put in Seward, or you can put in Homer or somewhere else. So knowing the local area is a strength. Knowing the state of Alaska is a strength. Knowing other people is a strength. But you know, again, I think you've got some great applicants there. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you get a chance to sit down and talk to them. And if somebody doesn't tickle your fancy, well, then you throw it back out for another 30 days. But I can tell you, and I'm going to talk a little bit at 7 o'clock about workforce. And if you think you're having problems hiring entry-level people or hourly employees, good luck with trying to hire an executive these days. They're being poached left and right. So one of the things that I've advised other councils about is that you go for the person. If they're honest, if they're trustworthy, if they can communicate, if they can build groups, they can learn some of the other stuff. Because we forget, our elected officials go to Juneau every year. And you know what? They they change the rules every year. So just because you know what happened last year or how something works, doesn't mean that you're going to know it for the future. But you all have a great opportunity, and as I said, you've got 5 great candidates, and I hope that you'll find somebody among those 5, and good luck. And please, if you wind up with questions or concerns or just how to look at certain things, Liz knows how to get a hold of me. Your mayor knows how to get a hold of me, and so does John. So please just let me know. But I do think, the comment was made earlier. I tease Norm and Stephen all the time because they've been around here for a long time. You're blessed. They do a great job. But the added stress that they've got on their job, doing theirs plus the other, that's difficult. But remember, when you're hiring that executive, that city manager, they're not by themselves. You've got a very good team. You've got 2 awesome folks here. You've got a great HR director, a brand new clerk. You've got you need a finance director. And there might be somebody in that group of 5 that would be better as a finance director. I don't know. But again, it's one of those things that you're blessed to have people applying for your job, and people that I can tell you from my seat are qualified. I see numerous people on that list that are qualified that could do this job. So be more than happy to answer any questions. I just wanted to throw that out just so that you all knew.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Randy, if you need somebody to do that fishing trip for you, I'm your guy.
Yeah, there seems to be a vacancy on the
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment? We got some more public here? No? No more?
Oh, wait.
Oh.
That was a
Yes.
quick one.
There you go.
Alan Nickel, outside the city limits. But of course, I'm the police chief, and so this discussion is very important to me. You're picking my next boss, and I think one of the biggest things that I would impart to you guys is that your most valuable resource is time. You have time, you need to take time. This is a very important decision, and I hope that you'll truly wait until you feel absolutely comfortable with whoever you're going to pick. I honestly feel here that we need a very strong leader, and what I mean by that is someone who has extensive knowledge in supervision. I'm personally, I see a city that needs a ton of upgrades and renovations. So someone with project experience would be just, irreplaceable as we head off into the future. As much success, a history of success, and as many facets of management as we can possibly find. And then the last thing I wanted to speak to was backgrounds. As the police chief, of course, we do a lot of backgrounds, and the police backgrounds are much more in depth than probably your typical background. And so what I wanted to talk about there is just that when you're trying to figure out what kind of background investigation we should do, you got to decide how deep do you want to go. And when you get past that sort of surface layer of what you can find online, and just making some simple calls to previous employers and things like that, if you want to go deeper than that, there is a level of training involved, and typically you're talking about someone with investigation type training. There is a method to it, and we're talking about things like developing not necessarily a person's referrals, their friends and their family members and things like that. You're digging for, like, who else does this person work with? who did they work with 5 years ago that you may still be in contact with? And so you start really digging down and drilling down, and that's where you get the meat of an investigation. So just understand that there is a cost that's going to come with that. So if you want that level of background, it's worth your time to pay for it. I just want to throw that out there. So, you're going to, I would personally think that you would want a very well put together professional background investigation that's done by someone who's trained to do it and understands the nuances of it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment? This is the, come on.
Becky Dunn, Inside the City, and I was just listening to the meeting, wanted to comment that if an evaluation isn't available, the one key question to ask is to call previous employers and ask if they would be eligible for rehire. You can learn a lot just with that one question, and that's legally basically all you're at. You can ask, or all I can answer as an employer. And one said, I know that got the girl the job, because I'm like, it was somebody calling from Florida, I think, or someplace in the lower 48, and I said, yeah, I would. In fact, I would give her the airline miles right now to come up if she wants to work up here again. And so she actually got the job. And speaking of people transferring in-house, I'm really happy with the new clerk, and I have total confidence in Tony taking over for Norm, and I hope Norm isn't too stressed to continue on. I was kind of hoping he would throw his name in the hat too. And agree about the importance of a background check though. But as far as employers, that's basically all you can legally say. You have to be very careful of what you can say. You can't even say if they stole from you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Okay, come on.
Linda Paquette, Outside City Limits. Thank you to the chief for what he said, because he reminded me that the one question I wanted to remind you guys to ask is, do you know anybody in town? I really want you to make sure you ask that, and that we know who they know in town. It's important. And it's what bit us with Mazzaro's. And so, had you asked that, you would have known something ahead of time. And we didn't, and so let's avoid that mistake in the future. Thank you, and great job tonight.
Thank you. Last call. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right. So I'll bring it to council and administration comments and responses to citizens' comments. Acting City Manager Regis.
I don't have anything. I think it was a good meeting. You got a lot of information out there, and the HR will get that stuff for you guys, and hope the committee does well and gets those questions going. And so once HR gets those questions, should make sure it goes through the clerk that you guys get the rest of those questions that were changed.
Assistant City Manager Saul.
No comments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we'll go around the table. How about we start with Councilmember Finch?
It'll be an interesting process.
Good. Councilmember Barnwell.
I'm excited. We have 5 people, and look forward to the interviews.
Councilmember Calhoun.
No comment.
Councilmember Wells.
I wanted to say thank you to the chief for his input and how much I respect his advice. And I'd like to thank all the citizens who did make comments and sent in emails, because they truly do help with this process.
Councilmember Demas.
I second that. Thank you for your comments, Chief. Someone, was it Linda that commented, or I'm sorry, I think it was Becky, that you wish Norm would stay. I'm sure if he wanted to, we could extend the application period for him. And I wanted to thank everyone that applied. I think it's brave to put your resume out to the public like that, so thank you. And that's all I have.
Okay, Vice Mayor Osinga.
No comment.
All right. Well, I just want to thank the people who were here and who commented. Thank you Tim, Dylan, for your comments, and we may ask you some advice along the way. You're the expert on city managers at this point, I think, so. And we obviously do not need the executive session tonight, which would be the thing following this, correct? So at this point, at 6:40, I will adjourn this special meeting.